Welcome into Steelers Latest, your daily spot for all news and information related to your Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the content and want to stay up to date with everything Pittsburgh Steelers. I appreciate everyone last week. I think we had our biggest viewership all of last week and our biggest jump in subscribers by the end of the week. So I appreciate you all hitting that subscribe button. Now let's get into things here today as NFL insider from CBS, Garrett Pottle. He said the Steelers have the worst quarterback room, worst quarterback situation in the league right now with Mason Rudolph, Skylar Thompson, and Will Howard. Now, I was singing the praise of Will Howard all last week. I still believe Howard is probably one of the strongest quarterbacks coming out of that draft class. Wasn't a deep quarterback draft class, though. So I understand why it didn't really boost us anywhere in the value. He's a six-round quarterback. Not a lot of insiders are really gonna think he's the needle mover in our quarterback room. Let's let's paint a couple pictures though here. What does Kirk Cousins? What's the value he brings to this quarterback room? Honestly, in my opinion, a whole lot of nothing. Trading for Kirk Cousins seems like as bad as a move as possible. Like that last 5 game stretch he had, 1 touchdown, 11 interceptions. Yeah, we're not gonna take that. We're in Pittsburgh. We gotta value the ball because our defense has been on the field many drives over the past couple years. It seems like our defense is what lives on the field while our offense is always taking a break on the sidelines. That's just how it's been since Ben's retired. So the past 3, 4 years, haven't really seen much out of our offensive side of the ball because of the lack of a quarterback. And Kirk Cousins doesn't move the needle enough. Probably still the worst quarterback room in the league if you just add him and try to start him day one. Don't think it goes well. I think it go pretty south instantly with Kirk Cousins in there. Now with Aaron Rodgers, just name value alone, I think the NFL experts are gonna rank our quarterback room in like between 23 and 28, I would say. Uh, but once again, don't think he moves the needle that much. Maybe 1 or 2 wins gets added to the win total with Rodgers instead of Rudolph. I think Rudolph, there is potential there. His deep ball was always the thing that people raved about with him. We've seen it a couple times at the professional level. Him at Oklahoma State, though, that's where you can really see the beautiful deep ball that Mason Rudolph can throw. And having two receivers like Metcalf and George Pickens who can go up and get that, I think it does lend itself to Mason Rudolph having a pretty successful season. But Rodgers, if he comes to town, probably would start. We haven't seen him in Pittsburgh, but if you're a horse racing fan, you saw him at the Kentucky Derby last weekend. That's all I got to say about Aaron Rodgers today. I don't, you know, I'm not going to waste my breath on him once again, just parading how he's treated us Steelers fans. But let's move on to another quarterback and our former quarterback Ben. I mentioned him, but Terrell Suggs, former Ravens outside linebacker, a lot of battles with Ben Roethlisberger, said, I would say, this is his quote. He said, I would say Roethlisberger, he's probably the most underrated. And what he's talking about there is quarterbacks, most underrated quarterback of all time. This was on the Rory and Mal Don't Know Ball show. So that's high praise from T Sizzle. You always have to respect the rivalry of the Ravens and the Steelers. The players, they on the field they don't get along at all, but just because they've been through the same battles, both on different sides, they kind of respect each other a little bit more than just the average NFL rivalry. I feel like. Uh, I believe this is true though. Big Ben probably is the most underrated quarterback at least of the past 20 years. I feel like people sleep on him a lot just because he was in the same conference as Brady and Manning. Brady a couple times stopped the Steelers from advancing to Super Bowls. Manning a couple times stopped the Steelers from advancing farther in the playoffs. So that's the main reason why I think Big Ben gets undervalued. But 2 Super Bowls. You know who else had 2 Super Bowls? Peyton Manning, 3 Super Bowl appearances. Peyton Manning also had only 3. Super Bowl appear actually, he had 4 Super Bowl appearances, but same amount of wins is what I'm trying to get at here. Also, let's be honest here. Best pass in Super Bowl history, most accurate pass in Super Bowl history to Santonio Holmes in the back corner of the end zone. Can't beat that. Gives you goosebumps every time when you watch it. And he put up top 10 numbers in basically every passing category throughout his career. He's the only player to throw for 7 touchdowns in back-to-back games also. There's a lot of things Ben did that no one else has done. And I mean, I could just be a biased Steelers fan, but most underrated quarterback of all time. Definitely a top 10 QB of all time, in my opinion, even though that people would say that's pretty iffy. But I know all the Steelers fans out there will basically agree with me on this one. But let's move on to maybe another addition the Steelers could have after talking about Ben a little bit. I know that wasn't what we traditionally do here, but I saw an article about it and I was like, it's time to talk about Ben. Give us a little joy in this off season right now, in this slight dry period. But should we grab Nick Chubb to be a veteran running back in our running back room? Is the question I want to pose for everyone out there. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think below. Just so I know all Steelers Nation's opinions about possibly getting another running back in there. Now, Jalen Warren right now is technically the veteran in our running back room. I guess you probably could say Kenneth Gainwell also, but not two big time players, I would say, ever in their careers in the league. I mean, Jalen Warren, I love him. He's a good explosive back out of the backfield, but sometimes has a fumble issue. But I think Nick Chubb, he more is like that Caleb Johnson build, that power back that can explode every now and then. Uh, and I think that could help in the development of Caleb Johnson, just having someone like Chubb in there to teach you the ways of the ropes around the NFL and how to be a power back in the NFL, what you should be looking for, how to protect your body also as a power back. I know you're more than likely going to be dropping the shoulders most of the time. Chubb has dealt with a couple injuries because of that. So maybe he can teach Johnson how to maybe avoid such big contact sometimes when he can. Of course, if you're running down the middle of the field, more than likely you're gonna have to put your head down and take absorb some big hits. But I think he also is a great option to be a third down back, a goal line back, if Caleb Johnson's development isn't going as planned right off the beginning. I think Chubb, as a rotational piece, to have a three-headed monster of Chubb, Warren, and Johnson back there, I would like to see it. I don't know how likely it is to happen, but signing Nick Chubb, I don't see it as a negative thing. It could just be, it would either be a positive thing or basically a push where it doesn't really affect anything at all. He's just in the building being there. But once again, think he could be a great role model and just player coach to a young player like Caleb Johnson, who is going to try to develop to be one of the upper echelon power backs in the NFL. But let's close out this Monday with some Monday comments from last week's video. Let's react to some of the top comments. I also got to shout out all the fans out there for commenting on the videos. Remember, leave your comments below all week long, and I will respond to some of them on the following Monday's show. But let's get into some of these comments. The first one by So Wavy Chris. He said, "What do you think about the overall draft? I say it was pretty solid. I'd agree with you that it was pretty solid. Could it have been better? For sure. I really liked our first two picks. I liked Derek Harmon a whole bunch, being that interior defensive player on the defensive front. I think him and Cam Hayward are going to mesh really well, and he's going to develop to be the next Cam Hayward. Caleb Johnson, he was one of my top running backs coming out of this draft that I thought we could get. So I really like Caleb Johnson. I saw a bunch of comments talking about how all the defenses were prepared for Johnson to get the ball because he was at Iowa. They have no pass offense, and they still couldn't stop him. I completely agree with all those comments. Once you got a back where they know what's coming, but you still can't stop him, I think there's high potential there with someone like Johnson. Where it starts to get iffy with me is the outside linebacker from Ohio State. I'm blanking on his name right now, but I would have maybe gone after secondary a little sooner with that. Same with the next pick, Yaya Black, another defensive tackle. I like the depth, but once again, I think we need more depth in the secondary than up front right now. I know up front was kind of a big spot on this defense that was letting up a whole bunch of rushing yards at the end of last year, but I think just adding Derek Harmon was enough to fulfill our run defense being better once again. But Yaya Black's in town. And then at the end of the draft, loved the Will Howard pick. And then the other picks are, of course, rotational picks. So not really going to affect me too much on how I rank the draft. But overall, as I said, B minus level draft in my opinion. Having Shadur Sanders on the board for as long as he was, I know there was a lot of questions about him and his just his mentality of the game and his demeanor during interviews with NFL teams, but him just sliding that far at a certain point, I was kind of like, let's just take him and try to develop him at a certain point. That's what I thought. Let me know what you all thought in the comments. Next comment is from Mark Darogatis. He said, "I want no part of Rodgers, but I'm not Tomlin." Facts. None of us are Tomlin. Only Tomlin can make that decision. But Rodgers, there is upside there where maybe he rewinds the clock a little bit. Maybe like Brett Favre's first year in Minnesota, able to rewind the clock and find his groove one more time to call it a good end to his career. But I can see why you don't want him. A lot of people in the comments were talking about let's avoid Rodgers. I don't think we're gonna avoid him at all. I think he's gonna be a Steeler and he's gonna start for us next year, and we're just gonna have to deal with it for a year. That's just it's not might not be what I want personally, but I just think that's how it's gonna play out. The next comment, though, from Genesis 1-1, the biggest difference I see between New England and San Francisco with these late round quarterback picks compared to the Steelers is that the Steelers' ability to develop quarterbacks is not very good. I see what you're saying, but New England and San Francisco kind of lucked in to Tom Brady and Brock Purdy due to their starting quarterbacks getting injured. Without their without Drew Bledsoe getting injured, without Garoppolo and oh Trey Lance going down for San Francisco, we never would have seen Brock Purdy or Tom Brady if players didn't get injured in front of them. I think if you're a late round quarterback, it's more about the mental than anything, your ability to prep for games than anything. I think Will Howard showed that he had the best mental capacity coming out of the draft. I think he's a true bona fide leader of men. You saw him on Gruden's QB class. Once again, that thing changed my whole opinion on Will Howard. Made me want him more and more as days approach the draft. But I think development of late round quarterbacks really is more dependent on the talent of that quarterback more than the ability of a team to develop a player. If you're going to be good at quarterback, you're going to be good. That's basically what I have to say about that. It's hard to develop the ability to just read coverages in the NFL. That's just something you have or you don't. And I think Will Howard will be able to have that ability. But I before I end this today, I also want to give a shout out to Verla Monson. I like your ideas. Get a little more upbeat when you talk, more excited, but like the stories you bring. And what I say goes. Keep this going. What you say does go. I'm gonna keep this going. I appreciate you all for the kind words and the helpful critiques. I appreciate that. Don't feel bad about critiquing me in the comment section. I take it and I use it to get better. So feel free to do that. But this has been the episode of Steelers Latest. I've been your host, Cole Dennis, and I will see you tomorrow.